months we met the last time.
Nee, unten drehen. Unten drehen.
Alles gut. Sorry. Yeah.
And time was time passed, and the new release 6 of Vampire Standalone Core is out now. Can you talk about this?
Yes. Well, it's nice to see you again, and I'm sorry
Yeah.
about the technical problems. It was a Windows.
Always problems with Windows. No.
Took forever and didn't work. Yeah, the whole team was working since very long time now on the release 6, and I think it was some good progress made in a number of areas, and I'm very happy about this. As you know, we ship all the machines with Apollo OS, which is based on AROS, and AROS being a big effort to revive the Amiga OS, to remake the Amiga OS, to allow continuous development again, so that progress again can happen. I really like this idea, and I think that AROS will be a great opportunity for the Amiga community to have a new OS that can be developed and improved. And here we had a lot to do on the release 6. There were a number of issues that the IDE driver in AROS wasn't working to the stability that we would want it to be, and so the team did rewrite this IDE driver from scratch, or reviewed it first to understand why the OS had problems with a number of IDE devices. And after we understood this, we also looked for some other issues and found them, and after fixing those, the team had the opportunity to improve the IDE driver a little bit, and we added file system cache. I mean, every operating system today has a file system cache. This is something you expect from an operating system today, and Windows and Linux and macOS wouldn't work in a usable state if they wouldn't have file system caches, right? I mean, and only Amiga OS doesn't come with one out of the box. There used to be alternatives developed which you could later run as a separate program, but we decided to now add the file system cache to the operating system from the beginning, so to say, which in my opinion is a great improvement, because many games or many applications which are developed for Windows or Linux or other systems could be ported to the Amiga. As you know, Arthur does a lot in this regard. There's a Sonic's port and many other games, open source games, he did port to the Amiga. And many of these applications today were written for Windows or for Linux, and they assume that the file system cache is existing. So they make stuff which is very unusual for Amiga programs that say, for example, load again and again small files in the background.
Oh, this is interesting.
Yeah, this can be a problem. For example, a very good example here is this Robin Hood game, which I was once helping to port to MorphOS a long time ago. And this was working the same way. It was originally developed for Windows, and it has a huge data file for all the sprites and all the background elements on disk. It's a big game and has also lots of spoken voice of the sprites that run around, Robin and the sheriff and everyone has talks in the game. So it's continuously reading the stuff from
Yes,
this.
it's a bottleneck for Amiga. This.
The stupid thing is the game doesn't cache it itself. It assumes that there's a file system cache, and when you have enough memory, then the whole game starts after a while to be in this file system cache and runs very fine and very well on Linux or Windows. But if you don't have a file system cache, it's never in the cache and it's reading all the time from disk. And that makes the game on Amiga a lot slower. So, and this is just one example. Many modern games assume there would be a file system cache. And so having one is really an improvement and helps you everywhere. Not only with those games, but when you click on open the workbench, as you know, every icon that you see on the workbench is a small file which is loaded, and you go back and forth, open a folder, go another folder, open this folder again. The whole speed of the system does depend not only on the graphics operation but also on the disk I/O loading all these small files. And here having a file system cache is really making everything smoother and better. So, well, this is one of the things we added to the operating system. And there were a number of core improvements we also did. For example, Jens Günzer, one of our core team members from IBM times still, he improved the divider unit in the CPU. So it's now twice as fast as it was before. It divides 2 bits per clock cycle, which is state of the art. So very modern, like Intel processors, Core 7 or so, they also do like that. So
is an improvement on FPU?
So this is a normal divide unit, the integer divide.
On the CPU?
On the CPU, yes.
Okay.
So it's faster. You also see this in a number of benchmarks that you see a few MIPS more now. And you feel this in a number of programs, but just little. Right? It's not like the CPU got now twice as fast, but
okay, it's
10 MIPS more.
It's the divide operation that was speed up.
Yeah, exactly. And so a number of things were added and improved. As you know, we have 16-bit audio in our chipset. We have 8 channels that can play with DMA, Amiga style, the music, and each of them is 16-bit. And Juan wrote an AHI, A-H-I, I don't know how you pronounce it.
A-H-I, well, I don't know.
Yeah. So this...
I know you liked a lot AHI.
No, I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
I really think this is a game changer because having this driver can be a plus for Wu4. I think.
Also to be honest,
Okay.
I hope I can speak honest. What I like very much about the Amiga was that in opposite to the PC, where the CPU has to do a lot and you burn a lot of CPU power for doing simple stuff, the Amiga, in my opinion, was a very clever design where the hardware was optimized to do stuff for you. And you could play music. We all like those wonderful mod files. ProTracker, we all recall this. and you could play there very good, in my opinion, quality music without needing any CPU power, because the DMA channels, so the automatic data transfer by the chipset, could read those samples and could play them back. And what the Amiga makes there very special is that each sample could be in any sample rate, and the hardware would mix this all together automatically. So you could play back different notes and different instruments, and the hardware would basically magically read this, calculates this, and puts this out to the speaker. And this is very different to some PC solutions work, where you need to read the data with the CPU, and you need to add this up and mix together, and then you give it to the hardware to give it to the speakers. So the opposite on the Amiga to the PC here is that the CPU doesn't need to do anything, and it just tells the hardware, please play those music for me, and the hardware does it all. And AHI, or AHI, is a software solution for Amiga, which is developed exactly like a PC solution. So if you use that, suddenly the CPU is needed to move the data around. So if you play a mod in, I don't know, Hippo player or some other Amiga player, and you allow it to directly talk to the Amiga chipset, then the mod is played.
Claudio?
Claudio?
Sì, ti sentiamo. Solo che ti stai facendo del casino, come al solito. Okay,
Can I continue? Okay. What I try to say is, if you play a mod in the Amiga way, it doesn't need any CPU. And as soon as
wait a minute, wait. C'è un eco. Potete silenziare, Claudio?
Claudio dich nicht an.
Okay? Okay, that's right. Okay. Okay, we can continue, I think. So
was there a question, or
AHI is more PC style, so you don't like it, we know. But
right.
The fact is that many programs now use it, so I think it's good for having a driver for the new chipset of the Vampire V4.
Yeah, that's true. It's good. It allows all the programs that are designed to use AHI to benefit from the 16-bit capabilities that the hardware has. This is right. This is nice. This is good.
Okay.
But even if I think it's not.
Okay, it's not from your heart.
No, it's not the right religion, right? You know, it's using the CPU where you would want the DMA to do the job, and
but having a native AHI driver for the ARNet chipset chip, it's good for speed too, or just for audio quality?
Audio quality. The chipset now that we have has 8 channels, 8, and in the release 6, each of them plays 16-bit audio, or can play 16-bit or 8-bit. You can, when you play a sample, can tell the channel to be 8-bit or 16-bit. And so this is an improvement to the old Amiga, which had only 4 channels, and each of them was only 8-bit. Actually, in the next release, in the release 7, there comes another improvement, and we added this for the Atari fans. The Atari had with the Falcon an audio modus that you could play a 16-bit interleaved stereo channel. It had only one channel, but 16-bit interleaved stereo.
Okay.
So because the Atari guys have a driver for this and expect this format, they asked us if we could add this to the Vampire. And we added this now, and so the Vampire in the release 7 also has this on Amiga side. And now you can, with one audio channel, basically play back a complete music sample, like from a CD. So you could, with hardware, now play 8 music CDs in parallel, basically, for free, using the DMA.
Wow.
So this is the next improvement. It comes with the next release in 2 months, probably. I can give you a test score now if you want to try it. But you're right, it's nice for all software which are used to AHI. They can use this today immediately, even if AHI adds a little bit of overhead. We try to use the hardware directly. So when we in our Riva video player play music, we go for the hardware directly. We not go through this extra overhead and save CPU time. And also in the games that we port, Diablo or the other games, we go for the hardware directly, Amiga style, which make it more optimal.
What do you think about the Atari guys' interest on Vampire? Do you think it's a public you can talk to? With W4, I think it's possible.
Yeah, when I was very young and had more hair, I only had a Commodore 64. And my friends, half of them, or the older ones, which had more money than me, they left the Commodore 64 and got an Atari. And it took a little bit longer. I went away, the other half of my friends, and I got an Amiga.
Your parents got wins at the lottery, or
yes, that's right.
At the blackjack.
My parents were at a roulette.
At the roulette. Okay.
Yeah, and so I got an Amiga long time ago, and yeah, so but I mean, we all know there was a competition between Atari and Amiga at that time. But both have one thing in common, they both have the same CPU. So both the Atari fans and the Amiga fans are 68K fans, right? All those programmers which were demos or those game programmers on the Atari did program the 68K. So it's no wonder that many games came also from the Atari to the Amiga and the other way around. You will recall International Karate.
The Bitmap Brothers games like Speedball and Xenon, I think they came from Atari.
So I think we both share the Amiga and Atari fans, even if there was always a little bit fight on the backyard of the school. Huh? We are all 68K fans, and the Vampire is the fastest 68K machine available. And of course we have now the Vampire has an Amiga, has Amiga chipset, but it also supports Atari stuff. So the Atari has, like the Amiga, a planar graphics format. The structure in the memory is a little bit different, but it's also a planar format, and you can have 1 plane, 2 plane, 4 planes. And the Vampire can display these modes also. So not only the Amiga modes, it can also show Atari modes. And we have those chunky graphic modes in the Vampire 4. 8-bit chunky, 16-bit, 15-bit, 24, 32-bit. And the 16-bit mode also the Falcon had, the Atari Falcon. So there are so many similarities. We have the Amiga audio mode, we have now the 16-bit interleaved audio mode like the Falcon had. So there's a lot in common, I think, that people which like coding for Atari and coding 68K, the Vampire 4 is a great machine. It's fastest 68K they can get. And I mean, the Atari guys, I have to say, they did a lot of things well, right? They, after Atari died, the fans continued develop the operating system. And this Emotos is a really nice written, good written operating system.
It's a bit Linux-like, or I'm wrong.
To be honest, I'm not a super expert about all of the Atari stuff. I'm only from using it. I did look into a little bit of the operating system stuff. Right now, when we tried to debug the IDE problems of AROS, for example, I was snooping how the Atari guys did it, and I saw they did it very clean. Very clean, written, very good, better than ours. And so it's a nice operating system, and we have good contacts with these Atari guys. And yes, for this release 6, for example, we had on AROS, we were not so happy with some of the speed of moving windows on the workbench. So we rewrote some of the driver graphic routines by hand, or I wrote a few assembler routines, which made release 6 window movement 3-4 times faster than before. And yeah, so we also talked to the Atari guys, and we showed them our code, and they said, oh, that's good. And they used the assemblies that we wrote now also on the Atari side. So it's a nice relationship, friendly relationship, and we share code. And
if I understand, until now, Atari operating system on Vampire is without audio. Was without audio. So
right.
With release 7, there will be audio on 3 minutes or for Emutos or.
Yeah, that's correct. The Atari had different audio features than the Amiga. The Atari ST had this Yamaha chip, which we don't provide in hardware, and the Falcon had this stereo sample support, which we now also have in the R7 release. And right, so Olivier Landemar is right now writing drivers for this. He told me a few days ago that he started with this and was testing and played already some music back on the Atari on the Vampire.
So from release 7, it seems to be that Vampire can be very interesting for Atari users.
Yeah, I hope. It looks nice. I mean, if you play there also Doom or Quake or so, these things, what they also have, they run very fine on the Vampire. So yeah, and they have a lot of cool stuff too.
Wow. Okay, then we can talk about. Okay, we talked about the core. We can talk about. Go on, Ozzy. Ozzy.
Wait, I'm
Buggy Boy. Okay.
Buggy Boy.
Okay, the new 2.14 core for Wutsu. What's about?
Can you say again?
Can you talk about the the new core for Vampire V2, the 2.14.
Okay. Yeah. The story is okay. Two sides has the story. First of all, we continuously try to improve the CPU. Like I explained to you, the divider is now much faster, and we try to optimize the operation of the CPU all the time. And so simply because of this, it makes sense not only for the V4 but also for the V2 to bring out updates. I mean, the V2, the accelerator.
Excuse me, the IDE improvement will be for V2 too, or?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, the IDE improvement, let's be honest, the IDE chipset of the Vampires always was super fast, and we didn't make the IDE faster. We only removed stupid code in the operating system using it. So the Vampire IDE chipset, as it could reach 20 to 30 megabyte per second speed.
Wow.
And it doesn't do this on Amiga OS 3 right now, but this is simply a fault of the operating system driver. It also didn't do this on the AROS IDE code, but this was simply because the AROS IDE code wasn't good. It was slow, too complex, too much overhead. And when we tried to find the bug in some AROS IDE code, we also rewrote the code, made it simpler and made it faster. And by doing this, the speed improved from 11 megabytes to 20 megabytes per second, simply by cleaning up the code. So the hardware was always so fast, but the software couldn't use it. And the same is true for the Vampire 2. The hardware, the Vampire 500, for example, or 1200, the IDE chipset that we have in it, that we developed, could do better, could reach a lot more if we remove a few bottlenecks in the software.
This is possible on Apollo S or even for 3.1 users.
Right now the situation is that no one knows who owns OS 3.
Okay.
And when I was in the Gamescom 2 years ago, the big computer fair in Cologne 2 years ago, and I spoke there with Cluanto and Hyperion. Already there was this disagreement who owns what, and
Today is the same thing.
It's the same thing, yeah. And I mean, as you know, we want to ship the Vampires with a licensed copy of OS 3. But if you don't know who owns it, and if these parties fight against each other and have lawsuits, there's so much, it's so unsure and insecure. And if you ask, can you show a proof that you own this, then no one has anything, right? So it's like, it's a bit strange. It's like you going to a used car seller and ask, can I get this car? And he says, yeah, sure, give me $5,000. And you ask for the paper of the car, and he says, paper, who needs paper? Trust me, I own the car, here's the key, yeah?
It not works this way.
It's a funny situation. And then you say, okay, but I want to resell the car, so I need the paper, right? if I sell the Vampire 4 and someone asks me, where did you get the OS? Can you prove that it's true? I need a paper. So this is our problem. If we want to revive Amiga, we need to have some. We need to know where we stand, and reviving Amiga is basically what our team wants. We are all Amiga fans, and we think Amiga was such a great machine. It's such a wonderful CPU, such a clever chipset, and a swift and elegant OS. And this is what we really like, this combination. And this is what we want to revive. But the problem is, in my opinion, no one knows who owns the operating system. And it's very hard to, under these conditions, to talk to people and to rely on anyone. And relying on Hyperion, in my opinion, is it's not an option. I mean,
everybody have the same opinion about Hyperion. But
it's not a company anymore, right? They don't have they have no employees, they have no company buildings, they have no work plans, they are not producing anything anymore. They're just an empty company.
I personally like 3.1 and 4. This is my. I think it's a clever work, but we all know that there's no life, maybe after.
I think if you want to, my dream is reviving Amiga, at least a little bit. And for this we need a CPU, and we spent 14 years developing a new CPU, and I think we did good. It's the best 68K CPU ever made, better than the ones which Motorola did. And we tried to revive the Amiga chipset. We redeveloped AGA. Our Super AGA now has more features on the graphics part. We have more resolutions, higher resolutions, more colors. We have better copper. We have better audio, everything better. And as you might know, we also have like a 3D core, which we are testing right now and hope to bring out in the release 7. So we really try to revive Amiga with doing it in the Amiga way, but improving it. And I think we also need to do this with the OS, because it would be easy if we could buy the Amiga OS from Commodore, but we can't. So the only option I think that we have, if we want to continue develop the Amiga and bring it out again, is to develop the OS and continue that AROS gets improved. And this is what we do with Apollo OS. We Pedro did a wonderful job in putting this nice distribution together, and I think
yes, every version is way better than the previous.
Yeah,
I can testify this.
Yeah, the improvement is really visible.
It's impressive.
And as you know, we work a lot on fixing bugs. AROS is developed from scratch. It's like a clean implementation without looking at the Amiga OS sources. When you look in the AROS sources, you see that they are not the same sources, but it behaves the same. It does the same. So you can open a command line interface and you can run types of commands that an Amiga has, and they work. You have the stir and copy and delete and alias, all those instructions that make an Amiga an Amiga. And all the functions, the Amiga operating system, as you know, is divided in different libraries. You have the exec library, the graphics library, Intuition. And also there, the functions are existing like they should be in the Amiga operating system. But to be honest, not every function is bug-free. So I would say 99% is good, and there's 1% of problems. And these need to be found, and when you find them, you can fix them. It's we run a game and the game starts but doesn't really work, and you only see a black screen, and then we look in the debugger and we disassemble the game, and then we find out where the difference is. Why we see a picture on the OS3 and we see no picture on AROS. And then we see, okay, here's this function on OS3 as a side effect turns on copper DMA, and the function on AROS doesn't do this. And this program relies on it, and if copper DMA is not on, you have no display. Okay, problem found, one line changed, copper DMA is on, plop, this program works, and probably a few others affected by the same difference also work now. So it's always, you find a program which has a problem, you debug it, you fix it, piece by piece. For sure, this gets much better, and we tune stuff now. AROS used to be slower in IDE than OS3. Now it's twice as fast. We rewrote the IDE driver. Apollo OS is twice as fast as OS3 now. The graphics code used to be very slow on AROS. We rewrote the functions. It's now 4 times faster. So it's faster than OS3 now, doing the same operations. I think step by step, if we work like that, it will certainly take many more months, maybe even a year or two. But at some point, this thing will be wonderful. And the beauty is it comes with a lot of modern stuff, which OS3 not has, right? You have out-of-the-box internet connection in it. There is USB driver support.
Poseidon.
Right. So many things can be put into AROS and used by AROS out of the box that you don't have in OS3, for which you need to pay. You have RTG out of the box, true color graphics included in AROS. So it's, I think, a great basis, and it allows all of us in the future to have Amigas which are pretty nice, right? We could in theory make the OS work like that. We immediately boot from a remote drive. Why not? You could in the future in theory build Amigas which don't even have a hard drive but get their files wireless. So OS has everything in theory for this. So I mean, I don't say we need to do this, but we now have the option to make really cool things. And yeah, I think this is the right way for us to revive Amiga.
I can testify that from some things, Apollos is really, really good, better than the 3.1 and 3.9. But the problem, I think, it's that many people connect AROS to PC in some ways. So there is some maybe they want to avoid the even try the AROS thing. This is I think this is a mentality problem. And then I see many people that complains about the compatibility of single games and single things. That can be a problem now, but in the future I think we can deal with that. But the big obstacle for me is people that thinks that AROS is not an Amiga thing.
No. I mean, AROS did start as Amiga replacement operating system. This was the first meaning of the letters originally. Because it was clear, Commodore is dead, no one will continue develop the operating system. And if no one does it, then you need to do it if you not want to wait. So the original idea to rewrite Amiga OS from scratch, to be able to replace it and to be able to continue to use it is, I think, the right idea and the right mentality of people which like Amiga and love Amiga. You're complete.
But now the aim was to build a new Amiga operating system for PC. So this is something that people have in mind.
Yeah, it's. I mean, ours was developed by not one guy, but by a team, and also of these people, some.
Eros is 20 years old, I think.
And others came and so on. Yeah. So different people had different ideas, and you are completely right. Some of these people wanted to, because they couldn't buy any Amigas anymore. Vampire was not out at that point. They thought, okay, let's use what hardware can we buy? Okay, I can buy a Pentium. So why not use Amiga OS on a Pentium? It's the same idea what the MorphOS guys had, right? They couldn't buy 68K Amigas anymore, so they wanted to use a PowerPC machine and run an Amiga operating system on it. And the OS4 guys also have the same idea. They couldn't buy Amigas anymore, so they took another PowerPC machine and also wanted to run Amiga OS on it. So it's the same idea in OS4 and in MorphOS and in AROS. If you cannot buy the old hardware anymore, let's at least try to use the same operating system on another system that you can buy. The idea is good. I mean, if you love Amiga and want to continue use it, why not use it on your laptop or on your Mac? And AROS and MorphOS have also some similarities. The MorphOS guys borrowed a lot of their code or part of their code from AROS and integrated this into MorphOS. So I don't know, if you say AROS, you don't like AROS, then you also need to say you don't like MorphOS. But you're absolutely right. A few of these AROS people were very PC focused and had a lot of ideas and wishes to do stuff on the PC with it, and then also put a lot of work and focus in directions which me for Amiga don't help. I have no benefit from stuff which is Intel code. So my opinion is here that AROS can make a wonderful base to rewrite Amiga OS for the 68K. My focus is 100% 68K because to me the combination which I always liked on the Amiga so much was having a CPU which is really designed for coders, really designed for programmers, and has this very readable code. And so our focus is here to tweak and tune AROS a little bit to be 100% optimal for the 68K. AROS already, I mean, in its development, AROS was, let me start again.
Now it is very different from the AROS that was 1 year ago. That's it's sure. It's for sure.
When I started with Amiga, then Amiga OS to me was very clear, very clean, in some ways extremely future visionary. Some very clever stuff in the 80s, very, very modern stuff like data types and BOOPSy and object-oriented programming. So they had a lot of visionary ideas in the operating system already in the beginning. very modern ideas, and at the same time, it's very simple to understand. It's very clear. It's structured, and it's also pretty fast. So they Amiga OS doesn't have so much overhead, and you always has this emphasis in Amiga OS that you could always go directly to the hardware, and there were not so many layers of abstraction like in other operating systems like Linux or so. You have always in Linux the memory protection, and that the user process is not allowed to see another user process, and this makes coding more complicated and a lot more slower, because if you want to pass a message from one program to another, you cannot just poke a byte to there. You need to prepare a structure, you need to tell the operating system it needs to copy the structure somewhere and then copy here and there. So it becomes a lot more complicated and slower. And this was not so complicated, but very direct. This is what I always liked on Amiga, because it made it, to me, easier to understand. And to me, it was always the fun of programming on Amiga, that I could understand what was going on, right? It was not such a black box. You could basically count the cycles in the routines behind it. You could, this also encouraged programmers to write tuned and fast programs.
Amiga doesn't hide anything.
Right.
True.
So the visibility to understand what's going on.
A very good point, Amiga. Today.
And in AROS there is more abstraction in some areas, which made it also slower. And for me this abstraction is useful only if you want to have several hardware options. So if you want to run the same operating system on PowerPC, on 68K and on Intel, then you need this abstraction. But you never had this abstraction in Amiga originally, because the operating system was always designed for the machine. Yeah. And we see Apollo OS, like this version of AROS, to be here in the same spirit as the Amiga OS, to be designed for the Amiga hardware. And I see no room in abstraction where it's not needed, because we follow the Amiga hardware principle. We have the registers where they belong, we have the copper, we have everything like the original Amiga. So there's no need to have an abstraction. We can talk to the hardware exactly like the Amiga OS did it, and exactly like it was specified or defined in the Bible. Right? Sorry.
Oh, the Bible.
Right.
That's the Bible. Okay.
Yeah. So
we have this Bible even in Italian.
I think it's. I really liked on Amiga that they explained the hardware in a clear, logical, structured, understandable way, and everybody could understand it, and everybody could use the hardware, and it was so clear described that it also makes sense today, right? So
it should be used on education for me. Amiga can be really a good educational platform for
indeed.
Young people that try to understand how computer works, because today everything is hid behind some structures and works okay, but even don't knowing why and how works.
Exactly. You are absolutely right. I mean, let's make a super simple example. Let's take the joystick. You have a few wires going to the cable through the joystick, and on one wire is electricity, and when you press a button you make a short of this electricity to another wire, and the Amiga can see, okay, here comes power.
Okay.
Right? And so it's a simple electrical contact, like you turn a light on your wall. This is very simple in hardware. You need no chips, no logic, no nothing in the joystick. It's just a contact, just a very simple contact. And the Amiga needs only a simple contact. You need to measure, okay, is here electricity, yes or no? You know, button pressed. When you look now at USB, it's a really complicated protocol, right? And the USB device, when you press a mouse button, you need a processor, a CPU in the mouse. It needs to send packages over the line. And in this package, a lot of data is located and structured. And in theory, every mouse can send the signals in any way it wants. And the other side needs to agree at the first place with the mouse, how do you send the signals? Do you first send the last button or the first button, or do you send the wheel or not? There's absolutely no structure, no logic, no order. It's such a chaos on the PC side. It's terrible. And it's such a waste of energy. If you think you need now in a simple device like a joystick, you need like a CPU to be able to create those packages. And you need on the PC side the CPU to be able to read out those packages and understand them and talk around.
It seems crazy.
It's crazy. It's crazy complex for something so simple like pressing a button. And yeah, we talk about global warming, we talk about don't drive your car, think about pollution. It's so overcomplicated, the stuff, that it eats so much energy for nothing. If you think about how much energy is wasted to make a simple stuff like a button talk in a complex protocol like USB and then speak a special language over a wire, it's such a waste of energy. And of money in the end also, right? So, I mean, if you have a Vampire 4 and you turn it on, the whole thing does it in the Amiga way, and it needs 2 watts of power. 2 watt. For the electricity this Windows PC eats, I could have 100 Vampires. Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm crazy, maybe this is engineer thing, but I don't like overcomplicated, stupid solutions. And in the PC world, for my opinion, they lack often clarity in the beginning, and then they have so many different solutions that it becomes a mess. And this is what I really like on the Amiga, that it's so clearly defined, like in this book here, right?
But that was the problem of Eros on PC, because even with the abstraction layer, it wasn't able to cope with new hardware that comes out every day. So today is very good to have Eros on an Amiga platform that is more stable as an hardware whole for me.
You're right, yeah. I mean, I think rewriting an OS, that you say Amiga OS is dead, let's rewrite it. Even without Amiga OS being dead, rewriting or clean writing an OS is a simple process. This happens all the day, right? I mean, we had Deluxe Paint 3 and 4. You have a new version, stuff gets rewritten. This is normal. And if you look on your internet browser, everyone uses now Firefox. Firefox is a child of Mozilla, and this is a child of Netscape. So that you start with a certain software, you add features, you improve it, and you revise it, and you come to another, better, more modern version. This is a very simple evolvement which happens every day with every software that we use. I mean, some people even claim that Windows 10 is better than Windows 3.11, but there was at least a change in the evolvement, right? So that if Commodore would have lived till today, if they wouldn't have died in 1994, of course there would not be not OS 3 what we use now. They would have rewritten it. We would have Amiga OS, I don't know, 9 by now.
95.
Yeah. so that stuff gets rewritten and improved. We also would have had the same with Commodore, right? We started with Kickstart. I started with 1.1, I think, on the Amiga 1000, and I got 1.2, and later then come 1.3, and then the 2 version came out with the 3000 and the Amiga 600, and then the 3.1, and later 3.5, 3.9. So if Commodore wouldn't have died, we would have had, of course, another Amiga OS now.
Yeah.
So that we have now this AROS is to me not special. It's like, okay, another company now tries, or some Amiga fans now try to do an improvement of the Amiga OS like Commodore would have done also.
Yeah. Okay, we can go on. We have talked about, you told everything about the new core for Vutu accelerators?
No, sorry. The truth is two things. I got distracted. Yeah,
the IDE and
we have improvements, and we don't have the OS license. So the reason that we need to made a major change now is that we want to ship also with the accelerators a new version of Apollo OS. Our goal is that when you can buy a Vampire 2 accelerator, you get it together with a compact flash.
Oh,
It's Apollo OS, and you can put this in your Amiga 500, for example, and you can boot up Apollo OS release 6 just the same way as you today have on your V4, and you have there the bootloader, which allows you to either use Apollo OS or select to install OS 3 or OS 3.9 or eMotors, what you want.
cool. So the next batch of vampires will be sold with a compact flash adapter and a compact flash too.
Yes. Yeah.
They will appear on an Apollo shop.
Yeah. We already have them here with the same compact flash drives that we ship the V4 with. These are 128 gigabyte compact flash drives. I think this is a good,
like V4.
Yeah, it's a good size for everything, to install every Amiga OS that is out there all on one drive. It's big enough and there's still a lot of room for all the MP3s you want. And
I understood correctly, it will come with the V4 bootloader?
yes.
Oh, cool. I didn't try it, to be honest. I didn't have a 128 gigabyte compact flash. They cost a lot. They're not cheap.
I can send you one.
Okay. I have one that comes from China, so I will wait patiently.
Yeah, okay. I'm not so happy with the China no-name things. I bought very many compact flashes from different companies, and I think it makes sense to have a brand, because it might have these brand cards, SanDisk or Kingston, they were faster and more reliable than these China ones. And
yes, I had some problems too. I can testify this. Alessio, possiamo andare avanti? Aziboshi?
Oh, wait. I am compiling Eros right now, so I'm busy.
Wow. Okay, Apollo OS, you have something some other things to tell about the Apollo OS development? We have talked about it, I think, but
well, we really want to make it fully compatible so that all the games and demos and applications work. And we also want to add the missing stuff. I mean, right now, as you know, Apollo OS comes with Dopus Magellan to as a user interface, because Aros itself has no good workbench. The workbench in Aros,
Wanderer.
there are two. Yeah, there's Wanderer and there's Workbook. Workbook is basically a C program like Workbench was also. And Wanderer is it's using a lot of GUI classes.
Okay.
GUI. Aros has Zune, which is a free GUI replacement, and based on Zune is Wanderer. And it's a little bit too much interaction, in my opinion, because the real workbench was very clear and very simple C structure and direct coded. And we started to take this development and develop a real workbench replacement which behaves 100% like the original Amiga OS workbench for Aros. And we are in the middle of doing this. Christoph Höhne from our team he's a German, did do this work, and he made a lot of progress, and it if he continues like this, then we might have a fully usable and 100% looking and working the same workbench as Amiga OS 3.
He's starting from scratch or from Workbook?
He started from Workbook.
Okay.
But the Workbook had some, I don't know how to say it, but I mean, Workbook, as a first start, it puts out icons. You can double click the icons, but that's it. You can't delete an icon, you can't move an icon, you can't snapshot an icon, you can't copy an icon. So there's so much missing. You can only click an icon. And so he rewrote all this. The layout routines were not like the Amiga OS did it, and so he basically rewrote it from scratch and added a lot of features to it. He's not done yet, but it's already a lot better than it used to be. So
I think I have tried something about it, because if you, the Polish coder Patapik, you know, is one on Discord, gave me an Eros Kickstart to test with some a loader, ADF loader, and I think he is working on.
Can I let my dog real quickly out? 1 second, right?
Oh yeah, well,
but
please.
he is in the background, right?
Sto guardando il codice relativo alla fastata di Gunnar.
Cosa ne dici?
Praticamente hanno rimosso 1 tonnellata di codice, semplicemente. Ma veramente 1 tonnellata?
I'm sorry.
Wow. Oh, okay. So when I booted from that Kickstart and I put a floppy disk on my Vampire 12, my Amiga 1200, it comes out with a workbench with the workbook written on the title. So I think there was something in that ROM with the workbook.
Mm-hmm. That's possible. But
Okay.
yeah, it's making improvements. I don't know which version you had, but Patapik is a good example, right? I mean, he wrote like a virtual floppy where you can
Yeah.
mount ADF files and use them like you would have had 2, 3, 4 floppy drives attached.
So it's a great idea.
Yeah, so I think this shows it's wonderful that people can contribute and help here to develop new features.
Yeah. Okay. We can go on. Azibashi.
Wait, the compiling is taking too long.
Oh, new Vampire apps and games. We saw the new Sonic Vamped, the new Jake and Peppy. Cool games. Then you talked about Robin Hood. You think this will come to fruition?
I hope so. I really like Robin Hood. I think it's a nice game. It's not so bloodthirsty, but it's a big game, and I like the graphics very much. We started compiling it for the Vampire, and it works. It's not yet super fast.
It's a 3D games. Yeah, it's a 3D game, or it's two-dimensional.
It's pseudo 3D like SimCity.
Okay, it's like Diablo.
Like Diablo. Yeah,
Okay.
Diablo is a good example. It looks very much like Diablo, this view, and but you only not have one character, but you have several, and you always have like a mission. You need to
It's like Commando for PC. Okay,
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
It's a great game. I like it very much, and I think it's very important to make games now again for the Amiga. I mean, to be honest, I was an Amiga fan because of the great games that came out.
Like many of us.
You know, I got my Amiga Defender of the Crown. This was impressive. Wow.
I can show you Defender of the Crown. Wait. You see?
Wow.
In reality, this is the Commodore 64 version because, well, okay, but okay, it's cool having the original box. Okay.
To be honest, I didn't have
other
the original.
Yes, it is an historic piece of software.
Yeah. I'm sorry, my dog
Yeah.
makes me open the door and close the door.
Okay. Any other things you can
But I can tell.
discover for us?
I mean, what I briefly touched is that we are working on a 3D accelerator unit, and we have Morten and John. Morten is Norwegian and John is British, and they are working on some 3D demos to show the feature, how to use this 3D chip. And when you look at the first 3D games on the PC, like Doom, for example, it's a very simple game. A lot of the mathematics in it is simplified, and how the graphic is displayed is also very simplified. They use tricks to avoid certain calculations, and the pixels on the screen are always direct mapped. So you pick just the next matching pixel, right? So this, I don't know how to explain it, but it makes it very
simplified 3D.
Yeah,
it's not real 3D.
And also the view is very pixelic. It's like a PlayStation 1, right? You see each pixel basically very much, and every modern or more modern graphic solution will mix pixels to create a picture. So if you I don't know, if you are right on this pixel here, you get this color. If you're right on that pixel, you get that color. But anywhere between those, a modern graphics card will blend the colors.
Well, anti-aliasing. It's
yeah, like anti-aliasing, yeah. And it will blend, it will make a mixture of the colors, this will make it smooth. And when you go near a picture, it will not go so blocky, but it will have interpolation between different pixels. And then this is all automatically done in modern graphics cards. Why is this automatically done? Because you need a lot of mass to blur and mix different pixels. You need a number of multiplications just for one color, for one pixel. You need to, typically you have 4 pixels, and you weight and bilinearly the value of the RGB values.
Yes.
So you have like 20, 30 multiplications just to get one pixel right. And if you do this with the normal CPU, this takes a lot of time, right?
Yeah.
And even an 060 is way too slow to do this for a game. Absolutely impossible. This is why on the Amiga these games look all so pixelic, those 3D games, because you don't have the horsepower to do this. And then here, you recall those graphics cards. One of the first which could do this was a Voodoo.
Yeah.
All of us will recall the Voodoo name.
Yeah.
And so this could do this in hardware, and this gave the PC such a boost for this stuff. And what we have added to the Vampire, we already started with this a long time ago in the Natami times, is basically the same hardware like Voodoo has. And so it does this pixel interpolation and texturing and this light and shading all in hardware. And this offloads a big portion of the game to the hardware unit, and you can with this make like Voodoo 1 games or Voodoo 2, so somewhere at the time.
Right.
Yeah, this is what we want to do, and we're working on this right now.
We can expect these 3D units for release 7.
We have the unit already, but we are preparing test cases for it, and depending on the outcome of the test cases, we might change a little bit or fine-tune on the unit. This is why we not want to publish it today, because I think when you write it in the book, then it should be well described, and also for the years to come, the interface should stay valid and true, because it should make sense. And this is why we right now test it and write demos and test cases. And when we believe it's perfect, then we'll publish it. And then we also have some demos and some games and some tools which will help others to use it. This is the idea.
Wonderful. We all expect, we are very, very excited about this 3D unit.
Me too. I have to say, I mean, when I was young, I really liked the Amiga games, and I always wanted to develop Amiga games. I contributed to a few in the old days, but I always thought it would be wonderful to make a living being a game developer. Commodore died, so this didn't really work out so well. But now that we are reviving Amiga, we again can now start to make games, and this is really a fun job. I mean, it makes fun to develop a little game. It makes fun to see kids, children playing such games. It's really an enjoyable work, and we have now a number of games, like you mentioned, Jake and Peppy, a completely new developed game from scratch, only for Vampire, and a number of game ports like this Diablo or this Sonic port, and which were previously completely impossible to run on an Amiga. Amiga was way too slow to run Sonic or Diablo. And we have also now people which are very interested in developing new games for Amiga, got interested in developing new games because of the Vampire. And our team started the other day to develop a new game for the Vampire. This was initiated by Bill from Discrete FX. He proposed a small bounty for game development for the Vampire. So I think I'm very happy about this. I think there will be a few games coming out.
Even Jake and Peppy is very, very good for the new projects. I don't know. The coder was already an Amiga coder, or just learned the way through the game development.
I think Kenji is not an original Amiga coder. He
it's
he learned
incredible.
it by his first game, I think.
Wow. Really.
Super, huh?
Yeah. Ok. Alessio? Hai finito di compilare Aros?
Let me check. No, the full compilation takes a lot of time, even on my server. Okay, it's
486?
It's an old server, but I have 4 cores. Still is compiling.
Okay.
And I gave a look at the GitHub repo. I see that there are just only a few projects inside the Apollo team repo. One is Eros. Another one is, I don't remember. I expected to see more stuff, actually. Some documentation and something to attract more developers. However, we have an operating system. It's a good start, in my opinion. My point of view about Eros is that from a practical standpoint, many people prefer just to download the Coffin OS. It takes a while, but it works well. You slap it into your CF card or SD cards, and in a few minutes you have all the software you can think of. It works almost everything, and no
People are
issues at all.
lazy.
So the nature of this software is legally questionable, probably, but for the average user, I think it's the way to go, because they don't want to mess up with the errors and compile, and maybe it's not fully ready for prime time. I don't know. This is only my first impression, because I'm seeing that users in our Vampire Italia forum still are using the majority. My impression is that is still using Coffin OS.
100%.
Not 100, because I'm not one of them. Actually,
I devoted my Vampire V4 to Apollo OS, so it's not 100%, but
I think this is very, very simple to understand, right? I mean, Coffin is based on Amiga OS 3.9. Amiga OS 3.9 is very well developed, was very well tested, has lots of improvements added and Boehn packs and so on. And Coffin is very well done. It's done with a lot of taste, very nice icons, and with a lot of care to put things in such way together that they work fine together. The data types are all installed. It's a very usable system. It's very good. I mean, this is what we all want, right? We want an operating system, a distribution, which is very usable, which has all the tools installed that you need, which has an Ethernet stack, has drivers, all the data types that you can listen to music, watch pictures. I mean, Apple is a very good example. You buy today a machine coming from a company which has designed the hardware, which has designed the case, and which controls the operating system, and which have put together a distribution which is very easy to use and has everything installed, so you can watch a movie, listen to music, read a PDF. You just open the computer, everything works. That's the idea of an Apple computer when you buy it. And I think this is the right spirit. If I give someone a new Amiga, I want that he or she plugs it to the TV, to the monitor, plugs it into the power, and it should just work. You turn it on, you have every program you need to read the PDF, to access the internet, to listen to an MP3, to watch a movie. This is how I think an Amiga should be coming to everyone that want an Amiga. Now the problem is, Coffin provides this in a certain way, but Coffin isn't really legal. Well, I don't know if any old Amiga OS can be called legal today, because with all these lawsuits, no one knows if even those that you think you can buy are legal at all. So if we want to give to anyone a new Amiga, right now the only way to do this in a really legal way, in my opinion, is using something aerospace like Apollo OS. And this is the goal of Apollo OS. The goal of Apollo OS is basically to repeat what Apple did right, to provide the people a computer which everything is pre-installed, which is fine-tuned and is just working. Of course, we are not today there where Apple is. Apple OS is great. They had many years, 20 years to polish this, and ours doesn't have yet this level of polishment. No, of course not. But as you will agree, Apollo OS really made an improvement in the last year from a distribution which looked not so good and didn't work so good to a distribution which works pretty well and looks pretty well and behaves very much like Amiga. And I think we will continue like this, and this is at least my goal, that in a year's time or so, Apollo OS is better than Coffin, works smoother, faster, nicer, has more features, is more usable, comes with more modern stuff, and is legal, fully legal, so that we can give everyone who wants an Amiga which just works right out of the box. This is at least my dream.
Okay. Okay. We can go on. Gunnar hinted me about something new to show us, but I don't know if you prefer to answer some question before or after. What's
We can show something new, and I can answer some questions to it also. Have you got a picture?
Yeah. I posted it on the forum. It was a Velociraptor image. It's like Jurassic Park is coming for Vampire.
Jurassic Park was a wonderful movie, and as far as I recall, many of the models
They were
for the movie were created on Amiga.
the very evil raptors on the film.
Yeah, this is right. As you know, the Vampire range has a number of cards, accelerators, and the V2 accelerators, for example, you have for the Amiga 500, 600, 1200, and the V4 is a standalone now, but there are still people which think the Vampire is not yet for them the perfect card because it's maybe too modern. It offers too many modern features like RTG and so on. And we always wanted to keep the Amiga fans in the loop, so to say, right? Our goal always was to revive Amiga and to offer create new Amigas for people which have no Amiga anymore or people which want a new Amiga, and at the same time also to give people which still use their Amiga, the trusty fans, an accelerator to put their card into new possibilities, to allow them to listen to MP3s, to give them the horsepower to do new stuff and to develop new games. And the new card that you just spoke about, the Raptor card, is an accelerator which is targeted mainly to the people which are deep fans of the AGA chipset and not so much fans of RTG, and that want to use on their Amiga 1200 the AGA for coding demos or for watching demos, but want a CPU accelerator mainly to have the horsepower to make new demos or watch demos which normally need an 060 at least. And so the Raptor card is basically a pure CPU accelerator with memory, 128 megabytes of memory and 100 MIPS CPU power, but without the RTG graphic option. So it's tuned or made for people which want to use their Amiga in the classic way with the Amiga graphic out.
This card will be produced by Igor.
This card is we have samples already, and this card is produced by Igor, but it will be sold exclusively over our shop. And if everything goes right, we will have the first cards next month.
Oh, it's
It's already...
It's near.
So I don't know. Maybe it takes 1.5 months. I can't promise, but we should have cards very soon.
So this card will have the 68 or 80 and AMMX instruction too.
Yeah. So we have AMX instructions. We have the FPU. We have the CPU. So this card is basically like any other CPU card, mainly to give you more horsepower and memory. But as you know, our memory controller is very fast. No other memory controller is as fast as ours for the Amiga. So this gives a really fast CPU accelerator to the Amiga fans, and allows them also to benefit from the new instructions that our CPU has. I mean, as you know, the 68 or 80 is the most advanced member of the 68K line. It supports all the instructions of the 020, 030, 040, 060, but it also adds a number of new instructions on top. We have a number of integer instructions which make coding easier. As I told you, when I was young, I wanted always to program games, and I have to say, because I'm a lazy programmer, stuff which is very complicated, I don't like to program. So instead, doing all these 100 multiplications that are needed per each pixel in my programs, I like to have a hardware which does this for me. This is why the 3G accelerator is good for me, because I'm too lazy to code complex programs. And this is also the idea of the 68 or 80 CPU. There are a lot of instructions make coding much easier for you. If you look at the AMX instructions, the instructions in there, most of the stuff the AMX instruction can do, you could also do when you code 5 or 10 or 20 old instructions. But then you need so much more instructions you write, and they take so much longer, that having this in one powerful instruction makes the program so much faster. So it's the idea of all these accelerating instructions, that yes, you could do it in 20 old instructions, but these would take 20 more times than in this one powerful instruction.
I can ask you, the new board is based on Cyclone FPGA, like the Butsu? Okay.
It's also
will not have RTG, don't have other things?
No. The idea of the card is, right now, I think there are people which believe, like a lot, the very old original chipset. And some people are not so fans of the RTG options. And so to get them into the boat, so to say, and to enable them to also use software which uses AMX features or new instructions, I think this card gives these people the option. And to make the card a little bit cheaper also for us to produce, we removed a number of connectors which, for example, the Vampire 1200 has, so to also lower the price. I mean,
so no SD card?
No SD card, no IDE, no HDMI,
okay.
No nothing. It's just a CPU accelerator for those people which don't want RTG features, but it's also cheaper
Okay. Yes.
At the same time.
Interesting. I think the price point will be a key to success of this card. This is.
I mean, the problem is it still uses an expensive FPGA, So I mean, we all know
Is the same on that is on the Vampire 1200 Wutsu?
it's the same size, but it's slightly different model.
Yeah.
The problem is, I mean, the wonderful thing about FPGAs is that we can put the matrix basically into them, right? I mean, if you look into an ASIC and chip, it's basically like a mainboard. It's a lot of wires, so to say. There is like a blueprint in it, and this blueprint defines how the chip works and operates, and how the mathematical units calc and what it can. So every chip, being it an audio chip or graphics chip or CPU, has these mesh, these wires, this blueprint in it, which defines its logic. And the FPGAs, they are like, how to say, we call it Eisenbahn in German, a toy train system, you know, where you put like rails on a table and you make a train. Does this translate?
I don't know.
You know what a train is, right?
Yeah.
And you can have this in smaller size, like
okay.
And you couldn't put on a table like the trails, the roads for the train.
Okay.
Sono le rotaie della ferrovia?
Like Carrera, you know Carrera?
Autodrome.
Yeah, for kids.
Okay.
Yeah, and there you can make the road how you want, right? With these, you put this together, no?
Okay.
But do I make myself clear? And the FPGA is the same. You can make the roads in the FPGA. You can change that. You can
change the binary. Okay.
Yeah, but it's not a binary. It's like it's like roads. If you look from, it's like a city with roads and crossroads and turns and another turn. Like if you look on the railroad map of a country from the sky, and you can change where the electricity flows and where not. You can change the direction of the voltage, and this is what makes an FPGA so wonderful for us, because we can improve the chip, right? We can say, okay, it has these features now, but I want to improve the divider unit, or I want to make it twice as fast. And we change the logic of the divider, and then we make an update and we change the divider unit to be twice as fast. This is a wonderful feature that you can't do with an ASIC, because with the ASIC everything is laid out and done. But
David Hayden said that if they had an FPGA at the time of Commodore, Commodore would have conquered the world.
Oh. Programmable chips. Dave Haney said if they had our CPU, the 080, then
something like this. Yeah.
Then they would have conquered the world, because the 080 was so modern, right? I mean, it's clear when you look at the 68K 00, it has 7 megahertz in the Amiga, and every instruction takes 4 to 20 clock cycles each. So it's doing, in average, less than one instruction. Less than 1 MIPS, so 1 million instructions per second, because most instructions take longer than 7 cycles. If you now look at our CPU, we can do 2, sometimes 3, sometimes even 4 instructions per cycle. Our processor runs at 85 megahertz, so we reach 160, 200 MIPS. So it's like 300 times faster than the Amiga 500 was. So the CPU is much more evolved, much more modern, much better. If you would think you would have had this CPU in the 80s, it would have killed everyone. Intel would be dead by now, right? It's like a modern Intel chip, our or 80 internally. So if Commodore would have had this CPU,
they will be ahead of their times.
Yeah, sure. It's like having an airplane in the medieval times, right?
Yes.
Everyone walks on foot, and you have an airplane.
You have a price point for this card in mind, or is too?
It's a little bit too early, but it will be significantly lower price than the Vampire 1200. So, but it has also less features, of course.
Okay.
We want to every penny we save, we want to give back to the customer here. It's an option.
I think it will be a good option for many people. It's a good idea, I think.
I mean, to be honest, when I look at Aros is C code, and it has modern C code, which you cannot compile with these Aztec C, Storm C, Amiga C compilers. So you need these fancy schmancy features that the modern GCC has. And the modern GCC is not so... It not always produces the best code for the 68K yet. We try to help here. There is Stefan Franke. Many know him under his nickname Bebo.
Oh yeah, Bebo. Oziboshi.
Who also
knows him.
Works.
No, I don't know him. I only use his product, GCC.
But he spent quite a lot of time trying to improve GCC for 68K because, I mean, when you look at big companies like IBM, you have there a whole floor in a big building full of people doing nothing else than improving GCC for power. And if you look at Intel, it's probably the same. They have there many people employed, which as a main job get paid to improve the code generation of GCC for the Intel. Because today, so many software in the Linux world and also in other areas relies on GCC and needs GCC to be compiled. So if you want to make your customers happy and sell you CPUs, it's good that GCC compiles programs well for your CPUs that you produce. This is why big companies like IBM or AMD or Intel or ARM employ people to make GCC better for their CPU. And there's no one paid by Motorola for this anymore because 60K is not supported by Motorola anymore. So what Bebo does is basically filling in this gap and in his free time trying to improve the code that GCC does for 68K. And when we worked on the Aros stuff, we also noticed that the code generation by GCC is not so super great. And in some areas, you can even say it's terrible. And when you are a good assembly coder, you immediately see that GCC does in some areas some pretty stupid stuff. And you think, this code could be 3 times faster if the compiler would be a little bit smarter. And we tried here to make GCC better and also to help GCC also to use sometimes more modern instructions which our processor provides. Like we have AMMX instructions, as you know, and we also have some other new features or better features which the oldest processors not had new instructions, but also more registers. As you know, a processor has internally the registers. On the Amiga, you know, if you coded 68K assemblies, these were the data registers, data D0, D1, D2, D3, D4, D7, and the same with the address pointers, A0, A1, A2, and so on. And so the 68000 had 8 data registers and 8 address pointers, and these were very fast variables registers in the CPU, and the processor could use on top of this always data in the memory and work with this. But the fastest operations you had when you worked with the registers. And this number of registers was the same with also with the 020 or 30 or 40 and so on. And the 080 for the first time changes this, and we have now not 8 data registers but 32. And the same also more address registers, and this makes often is so when you have a very complex calculation that not all of the variables that you use in this complex calculation can be kept in the registers, and that you need to use in the calculation elements outside, which you then put on the stack or put in the memory. And especially as more complicated your algorithms become, or more complicated your mathematics becomes, especially in 3D games, you often run out of registers. The 68K had more registers than the Intel CPUs, so it didn't run out quickly, but it always runs out in big, complicated calculations. And when you followed the development of the Intel CPUs with the AMD enhancements, they increased their registers to 16. And the 080 basically also does this, and we upgraded the FPU registers to 32 and the data registers to 32. To cut a long story short, this allows the compiler to do a lot more complex calculations without needing to go to memory. In short, this gives more speed. Makes code simpler and gives more speed. And so we try to make the compiler make use of this to allow programs to run faster, to allow people to do more cool, nicer stuff on Amiga. And I think here also it makes sense to, as more programs start to use this or require this or benefit from this, providing here an accelerator which supports all these improvements also allows people which want to continue to use their Amiga with AGA only, but if, I don't know,
That's
music
cool.
programs or text programs come out which are compiled to benefit from these features, they can still use them then.
This is very important.
Do you have an assembler for the Vampire?
Yeah, you can of course use the old assemblers also, like ASM1. I always use ASM1 because I'm a Zeka
So how do you
guy.
access the register that it has, the new registers?
VASM supports them.
Uh-huh.
V like
See.
Victory, and this is done by Volker Bartel.
Mm-hmm.
He also did the VBCC C compiler, and yeah, this is a very nice assembler, and it supports AMMX and supports the new registers and new instructions. So you can do everything you want with this. We also try to add this now to the GCC. We added a number of new instructions and new features to it already, and we will continue to do this. And I can clearly see also the improvements of this. The code gets shorter, smaller, and faster. And I mean, AROS always had big problem because they had so many features that they had problems to compile AROS for the Amiga ROMs if they wanted to make a ROM which stays in 1 megabyte. And now making use of these features makes the code also a little shorter. It allows us to be slim, to stay in the ROM. Shorter, faster.
Ok, Alessio, ti lascio la sessione di question and answer, ok?
Okay, where do I get them? Only from our phone?
You can. There's a couple of questions on the forum, and then maybe from
Okay,
here.
I will start with my question because
Okay.
I'm the moderator. So please, Gunnar, tell me if I'm wrong. For what I understand, the Apollo team now has started some sort of partnership, let's call this way, with Bebo, and now Bebo is trying to improve the compiler with taking advantage of the AMMX instructions, and probably for what I remember, the Vampire offers 24 data registers and other 8, I think, address registers. So that means that in the future, GCC will have some sort of a switch like minus 6080, for example, and this will produce code with using these new registers and new instructions. And if yes, can I try today? There is something publicly available that I can try, or this is just a work in progress?
Okay, there are many questions in one. Yes, Bebo is since quite a while working on improving GCC code generation for 68K, and his compiler that you can download already from his website supports already an 080 switch, and it will produce code which is tuned for the 080, and it will also use instructions which only the 080 has. So if you download his compiler or cross-compiler setup from his website, or you download the source code of his compiler and compile it yourself, then you will get already a compiler which supports an 080 switch and which will create binaries which will only run then on an 080. In addition to this, the AROS compiler setup uses a normal GCC, which is not Bebo's fork, but the GNU original CCC thingy. And we backported, so to say, a few fixes from Bebo stuff to the compiler that the AROS team uses, and we try to add also new features like AMMX support to it. And we do this together with Bebo, or we exchange ideas with Bebo, and when we have stuff working on the AROS GCC compiler, we give this back to Bebo, and he can also edit. So right now we have two compilers. Bebo's compiler, which is basically tuned to be a cross-compile suite from Windows or Linux to Amiga. And we basically tried to also improve the GCC version which the AROS team uses. But we are in very good relation here with Bebo, and when we fix something or find something, we tell him, and he does the other way around, and maybe they will both merge. So you can today download Bebo's thingy already. Our is still in the middle of improving. We just started. Bebo has already spent some years onto this. We started with our version just 3 months ago or 2 months ago, so it's not yet there for download. But when it's on a little bit better, higher level, that it does more things than today, then we should certainly provide this for everyone.
So why using your own compiler? Is the one from Bebo does not fit your needs? So it feels to me that you are trying every time to redo things from scratch, and I don't know, maybe sometimes it's better to avoid and focus on other project. I don't know, but it's a little weird, this relationship with Bebo. So you have two different projects and you make suggestions to each other, but at the end you always have two final products.
No, it makes absolute sense if you think why this is this way. Bebo's compiler is absolutely tuned for the Amiga, and he produces the way he passes verbals and everything is the Amiga way. And the AROS compiler has a few AROS patches in it, and doesn't have these Amiga patches that Bebo has in it. And so they are already not the same foundation. So the thing is, you can today with Bebo's compiler not compile AROS. So for us, being quite honest here, I would just wanted a very simple way to not change everything in the AROS compiler, but to make the AROS compiler produce better code for the 68 or 80. So I just took a few fixes from Bebo's thingy and added a few fixes myself to the already working GCC in the AROS project to get it better. So this is not a decision done because I think it's the most elegant or the world's best solution. This was just done this way because I wanted a solution working in 3 days and getting better code for the R6 release without finding out how to make Bebo's compiler be able to compile AROS. So this is a solution to save time and to get a good result. And I think we will with Bebo work here together to maybe they will both migrate. But yeah, this is more.
It needs time.
Yeah, it needs time, right? I mean, I only wanted to get an Amiga, you know, and then Commodore dies, and now we needed to develop the CPU, and then needed to develop the chipset, and then we find out we have no OS. Okay, then we start working on the OS, and then we find out, this compiler is shit. Damn. What should we do? Okay, let's try to make it a little better. It's not my goal to rewrite GCC. I just want to have a good Amiga. But we have so many things to pick up on the way to it. So this is just like I mentioned. You see that the C code quality, the quality that the compiler makes out of the C code is not so good as you wanted, and you figure, damn, if this bug would be fixed, this loop would be twice as fast, and then I'm sure this graphic code would run twice as fast as well. So you simply try to fix this to give people a better Amiga OS. And this is why we started with the GCC stuff. And Bebo is there to help us, and we will stay in contact, and we will see how this develops. But our goal is actually only to make Amiga OS better and to help people to get better programs for Amiga.
Okay, now I don't want to take all the time for me, and I will proceed with the question from our forum. Stefano, is this the first one? Can you see my screen?
I think there is a question from Danny PPCima, but I think he just asked on Discord.
Okay, so I can start from Lashko.
It's this one is a question for sure, but I don't know how many questions from the forum.
Just two, I think. I will try to start with this, and then if you find other questions in the thread, just tell me. So the question is, hi Gunnar, I'm following Apollo Team products from beginning of 2020. I read here in the Italian forum that R7 core release will include, okay, this is just partially discussed, will include the 3D capabilities enabled for developers. And Apollo Dream Team had an example set of assembly macros to execute 4x4 matrix multiplication at best. I'm investigating which fixed point format is best suited for handling 3D scene manipulation under Vampire v4, and an extensive set of already made assembly macros would help a lot. In my game prototype, when I define a material, I set base color metallic, roughness, and normal textures to make it real. This is a programmer, I expect. Can we expect something similar implemented in Meiji? Thanks for all your efforts, Apollo Team rocks. This is the question.
Thanks. Well, okay. Maybe it makes sense to say a little bit about the FPU. When you started programming on the 6800, you always did everything in fixed point because this is the only way you could get a certain speed. And then with the 030, you had the external FPU, but it was rather slow. And again, making a 3D game using the FPU wouldn't work so well because the FPU was cool, but it was pretty slow. And the FPU only started to become fast with the 040. And because then with the 040, the external FPU was pulled into the CPU, a few instructions were dropped, but the stuff which you need a lot for 3D, this is fadd and fmul, also floating point addition and floating point multiplication. These were very fast in the 040, and also the 060, which pulled the FPU in the core, does these instructions fast. So these two CPUs basically started for programmers to make sense to use FPU for 3D operations in games. Before it didn't make any sense. And this is basically the time of Quake, which then came out, which started to do all the 3D math in floating point. Now, these both FPUs were not pipelined. This means when you start a multiplication, it mul, and then result is there, and then the next instruction uses the result. And it takes, again, several cycles to do the next operation on the result. So typically it takes 3 or 4 or 6 cycles to finish one operation, which was a big improvement compared to the external FPU on the 030, where an operation took 30 or 50 cycles, but still it took several cycles. Now, when you look at the 080, all FPU instructions are fully pipelined. They still take a lot of cycles, 1, 2, 3, but you could immediately in the next cycle start the next one if this uses another variable. So you could do a multiplication and immediately a multiplication and so on, and they would take several cycles to finish, But every cycle one operation is done, and you get a good throughput. And this is basically the same like a modern Intel CPU or Intel FPU today also calculates. It takes several cycles to do a multiplication, several cycles to do an addition, but it can finish every cycle one if they are not depending. This means if you write your code that it's calculating many operations in parallel, which are not depending, you can get on these FPUs a very, very high speed. And this is basically how all programmers today develop for Intel or for Power. This is also a reason why we added so many registers, because having 32 registers makes it now much more easier to do all these parallel calculations that are not depending. If you have only 8 registers, it's very difficult to do, but if you have 30 registers, it's no problem at all. Okay, now I explained maybe too much, but the thing is, if you know how to write code which is not depending, then you can get super fast FPU speed out of the 080. The FPU of the 080 is like 4 times faster than the FPU of the 060 if you write in a parallel way. This means you get like 300 megahertz 060 FPU speed out of a Vampire if you write the code properly. And yes, so I would not use a fixed point, I would use FPU code because this is much faster. But I would use a block that we prepare. We have done these matrix multiplications for the FPU already, which is very fast, and we will publish those, and then people can just reuse them, and they get the best results out of this.
Wow.
If I can add my experience, if not, maybe someone is interested, I took another approach. I wanted to perform 4x4 matrix multiplication because I built my own 2D engine in MMX, and I took another path. So I discovered that inside the MMX there are 2 instructions, multiplication low and multiplication high. So I ended up loading the data registers with the matrix data. Then I multiplied each row, and using the high bits, I managed the overflow. So the result is that you can do something similar in fixed point. So I stated, for example, that my list 6 significant bits contains the decimal part of my multiplication, the final outcome, and then normalize it, do the addition and normalize it. You end up with some rough, it's not very precise. Probably if I use FPU, I get more precision, but my squares, my triangles are rotating across the screen, so it works in some way. And this was done essentially just using PMAL low, PMAL high, and just some addition, P add, and nothing more. It's really easy, and it's another way to perform. It's always a matrix multiplication at the end, and not using a FPU. So because when I started learning Amiga, I instantly forgot about mantissa and how decimal are represented in modern CPU. I always wanted to do integer calculation. So that's why I took this path. Let's say the second and okay. This is the final question is from user the best user in the world, Z3K, and spotted an article from Tom's Hardware about an upcoming Raspberry Pi based Amiga accelerator card, and he quotes, PyStorm is a direct competitor to Apollo accelerators who make their own hardware acceleration solutions. What do you think about such hardware solution? Are they really a competitor for the Vampire? Thanks.
What do I
The
think about it?
answer is no.
I mean, to me, the beauty of the Amiga, I mean, I explained it before already, was that you can do with very few instructions great stuff, right? And you have to have a very elegant design behind it. You have DMA to play the music, and you have very powerful instructions in the 68K, where the programmer can, with simple understandable instructions, do very, very complicated stuff, and in an easy way. So it's a wonderful combination of being empowered and also doing a lot of cool stuff by using very few instructions. The very opposite to this was later developed. The reason is making a CPU like the 68K is very complicated and needs a lot of development work inside the company. And in the 90s, they shrank the transistors very quickly. So every new CPU generation came out with smaller transistors, and smaller transistors allowed the CPU to reach a higher clock rate. So it was very important to redo the CPU again and again and again every few years to make use of the smaller transistors to reach higher clock rates and to be able to get bigger caches. We all recall this. When the CPUs came out, they always got faster because they used a newer, smaller process. But doing your processor again and again is a lot of work. And when your processor becomes more complicated and has these many complicated instructions inside, this needs a lot of human manpower to develop. And many companies not wanted to spend this effort, these man hours. And their solution was to make the CPUs more stupid, less powerful, less good. So they developed much less good processors, which needed, but also much less time and effort to design. So the success at that point was made by cheap, stupid processors called RISC processors. Like the ARM chip was very stupid, very simple, and so the competition of the very clever, very smart CPUs were the very stupid, very ugly to program RISC CPUs, which has the benefit to be cheaper to produce. So the companies did save money and gave us less good chips to the users, if you sum this up, right? So IBM saved money by spending less money on the developers and gave the customers in return for the saved money less good chips, worse chips. Chips which were harder to program, which had less good instructions, which were not as easy to understand. So this is a whole development of the RISC line in comparison to the philosophy of the CISC CPU. To me, the Amiga was a combination of having a wonderful to program CPU with the elegance that this CPU could really do a lot with very few instructions, and that you could do awesome, wonderful things with DMA and so on. Now, If you say you like the philosophy of this, then looking at emulation, which uses a very stupid RISC CPU to emulate a very beautiful CPU, is basically, I don't know how to explain this, but it's a little bit like preaching against eating meat and wearing a coat made from young seals slaughtered in Alaska. You know, it's like, to me, this is not the right way. If I know I program here a CPU and the CPU is very elegant, and to emulate one instruction of this elegant CPU, a very stupid, a very inefficient CPU is used, running in the background 50 or 100 instructions. This is a little bit hypocrite to me on the philosophy of Amiga. And this is the same, like I mentioned with Ahi, that I like the elegancy of the Amiga in playing back audio with the DMA, and I don't like using a million CPU cycles to do something which the original Amiga design did with DMA for 0 CPU cycles. The P-Storm is a geeky, fun project, but it's absolutely not in the spirit of the Amiga. It has nothing with the elegance of the Amiga design in common anymore. You use the CPU running at a gigahertz, using hundreds instructions, running a software emulator, going all kinds of overheads to emulate a once very elegant CPU in a very complicated and very unelegant fashion. This is not the same spirit of the Amiga to me. And it doesn't reach the performance that you would expect, of course, because this emulation eats up a lot of speed.
Okay. Any other questions for Gunnar?
I think we are done, at least for the from our
I was going
forum.
to ask a question.
Go on, Mr. Phase 101.
Okay, so to be honest, I'm not interested in arrows myself. Okay, so I don't have anything against arrows, but I'm not interested in arrows. When I had the Amiga, I was not interested in Workbench. Okay, not at all. I just wanted the hardware and program the hardware. Okay.
Okay.
So you said you wanted an Amiga, but I think you created an Amiga Plus, okay, with more things, with more elegant things, with more beautiful things that I wished that the Amiga had at that time. So,
Me too.
so I would like to be able to use those features, okay, using the assembler. To be honest, I didn't know that Vasim supports Apollo, and it's a shame it's not written on the first page of Vasim. That's why I didn't know. I had to go dig down into the documentation to find it. So that's a shame from Volker. Let's put it this way, that it's not in the main page of CPUs that it supports. However, if I want to program the hardware that the Apollo has, the Vampire, I just need a manual, like the Amiga hardware manual, that tells me the features, and hey, let's go with it. And where can I find this?
Can I type here? Can I enter an URL? If you go...
Yes.
I absolutely understand what you say. And to be honest, I thought absolutely like you when I was young. I had my Amiga 1000. I had Zeka assembly. Why did I need the OS? No, I didn't need the OS. First thing, what I did was turning the OS off and going always directly to the hardware. But these were the times when we wrote demos running from a floppy, demos being put in the boot block of the floppy, where you had only 1 kilobyte of memory, and you try to develop a sinus scroller going through a sprite starfield or so in this 1 kilobyte of code. And yeah, of course, we looked at the hardware reference manual, we understood how the hardware worked, and we directly coded for the hardware. And it was so clean, the hardware, that this made sense, and this worked great for me. So I understand absolutely where you come from. I understand what you mean. And you are right. The only thing what is needed is basically a book like the hardware reference manual explaining this. We have started to write this. If you go to our website and you enter right behind the slash saga doc slash, then you enter in a web view of the chipset of the Amiga, and we have added all the new registers that we have for Super AGA into it. You can there see how to switch the copper to 32-bit mode and to use 32-bit moves in the copper list. You can see there how to, with one simple poke, set the screen to 8-bit, to 16-bit, 32-bit, 24-bit mode. You can use this also from a copper list, so the copper can set up 24-bit screens. You see there where the new audio registers are, how to set up 16-bit audio. But this is kind of the structure of the hardware reference manual, the register overview, and it assumes basically that you know the old registers, and we added all the new features to it. So not every old register is there explained yet. I started writing this for the old registers, but I didn't finish everything. But all the new registers are already explained there. So you can see there how to read the buttons from the USB button joypads, or how to use the new sprite features. The Super AGA supports new sprite modes, where you can have each sprites can have 13 colors, and you have special color registers for the sprites. So you can, in the sprite controller, pick which palette the sprite shall have. All of this should be very briefly explained there. Our goal is to polish this very much, to add all the old registers there, and also to add more programming examples, and when this is done, to make a nice PDF or out of this and make this public. Right now this is work in progress, but it can be used as a programming or basis for you.
I went on the website, but I didn't find the documentation that you just said. So I don't know if I'm looking at the right place, but yeah.
Oziboshi have a PDF manual posted by Darren on the Discord channel.
That I saw. Yeah, that I saw. Yeah, that I saw of Ozzy. Yeah.
Can I type in here?
You should be.
You can post link in the general channel of this Discord stuff. It's more complicated than the Amiga. Okay. Saga doc.
Yeah, I do understand people that want to use arrows or things like that, but I am too much old school, if I want to say that. So I just like the programming the hardware. That's what I like.
I understand you. This is wonderful. Programming the hardware makes a lot of fun.
So yeah, that's why I directed that question. It's if I want to use Windows, I think nowadays there's so many Windows. So yeah.
yeah, I posted the link for you. I hope you saw it. You can go there. You see all the registers. You see.
Oh yeah.
I'm sharing the screen, I think.
Yeah. Everything which has to do with sprites is yellow and blue is audio. So you will find your way.
Okay.
Okay.
Picture
Any
in
other
picture.
question for Gunnar?
Oh,
Or,
this one is missing. So no other questions?
we let Gunnar go to bed?
It's too early. Usually our meetings end up 3 in the morning, so it's just midnight. I can make up some questions if you want.
Go ahead.
So
Only one.
no, I have tons of questions.
Oh my God.
Just I will be quick. I remember that some month ago you had in mind something like a demo competition, something related to Vampire, and did the project stop? And additionally, I saw that the winning demo for the revision of this year was done in partnership with the Apollo team. So my question is, were you involved in this project, the Martini effect? Is the question.
I think when I was very young, I enjoyed very much coding little intros and bootlock demos and these things. And to me, this is a big part of what makes, when I recall Amiga, these scrolls and effects, and this was a nice time and very, very nice to view and to see. So this is for me a big part of the Amiga spirit. And when I look at the features that Super AGA delivers, I think this should also be utilized by demo coders, because the new features allow cooler effects or make things possible which were previously impossible. Or you could, like mentioned, when you do a 3D demo, you never had the CPU power on the Amiga to make it not so pixelic, but the nice color interpolation which made it look more natural are only possible now. And so I think it's very just normal that new demos should use these features, which we always would have loved to have on an Amiga, right? Wouldn't it have been wonderful if the Amiga 1000 would have had 16-bit 8-channel stereo features already, or would have had 16 sprites being able to show in parallel and all being so big like they are now and having so many colors. What kind of games or demos would have been possible with that? So I think encouraging demo coders here is the right thing to do, and supporting them is also very important. We wanted to make a demo competition around Christmas, but then felt that we had to focus on fixing some very important bugs in AROS, like the IDE bugs and other issues there. So we hadn't yet the full time to work on demo stuff. We also thought that it would be very useful for demo coders if we create some examples how to use these 3D features, because I think 3D stuff is always very complicated to do on Amiga because there's not so much support from the hardware side, and you're always there very limited in what you can do. If you look at all those demos on the Amigas or 60s, they have always very simple models, they have very, very low resolution, and you can't really do something more demanding because the hardware doesn't allow it. And I think we want to help coders here with example programs and routines to encourage them to use these features. But as you know, this is still stuff we work on. We weren't able to finish all this in time. But as soon as we have finished this and have our 3D examples ready to share, I think we will continue here and encourage people to write demos. And we also think we might give a prize out there, maybe a new machine or so for the best demo coded on Vampire. These are ideas we have and will probably work on later this year.
Why not a game instead of a demo? I think the Vampire needs games. That's why I said that.
You are 100% right. I 100% agree with you. Demos are cool, games are cooler. In my opinion, or my experience, to be honest, I personally found it always more difficult to write a game than a demo. I can only speak for me here, but when I look back in the old days and I wanted to write a demo, I had many ideas and I thought, oh, this feature would be cool, this would be a nice effect, that would be awesome, and this is something the others haven't done yet. And then I started programming and okay, this works, I'm stupid to get the math right, this looks good, and here something is not working. And then I had 2 features of the 4 I actually wanted to do. The demo still looked okay-ish. Nobody knew that I wanted to develop 4 things and only managed in the time to do 2. So when I released my intro, it was okay. 2 new features, all good. This worked for me very good with demos, so I could always drop stuff which I was stupid to write. When I started to write games, I realized this doesn't work so well. You need the color collision, the sprite collision to work. You need the joystick control to work. You need the audio to 100% work. If you drop something, the game suddenly doesn't work no more. So it's very... So what I try to say is, if you write a game, you have 100% to finish, and the game is only finished when you reached 100% of the things you wanted to do. With a demo, you can basically as often in the middle stop and say, okay, I have no time no more, the demo competition is tonight or tomorrow, I stop now, and what I have as features is good enough. This did never work for me with games. And
it's true.
So I think completing a game can need a lot more.
The reason why I ask, because I started doing demos. I was doing demos, but something changed in me, and now I'm more pro to games than demos. Somehow I'm not anymore interested in demos. Not interested. I still like them, but I prefer the demos that I'm used to than the ones that they are making now. I do not know how to explain it. But
fully understand you. I fully understand you. Maybe I can repeat you in my words. When I was young, I saw demos and I thought, wow, this is clever. How did they do this?
Yeah.
And it was basically, I mean, if you a checkerboard, these Amiga checkerboard that you have these, you know what I mean? These
yeah.
It is so simple.
Yes.
what they
It's the
do,
thought of it.
but it's so clever
Yes.
that they do it for free, right? You have just a 2-color picture and a few copper bars basically giving you the checkerboard effect, and it costs you 0 CPU. It is very, very smart using of hardware Amiga features, and these smart using of hardware Amiga features made demos cool.
Yes.
And finding these things was a cleverness in the old days.
Yeah.
These demos were crude, and the scroll text basically was written. It looked like the guys were totally drunk. Probably they were totally drunk when they wrote the text. But they had fun in this, and it was somehow, to me, it was cleverness, which surprised me in these demos. When I look now at some designs, like these how job thingies, they look to me more like a movie player playing back some nice effects someone orchestrated on a PC toolkit.
Exactly.
They look nice. They are like a James Bond movie beginning or something. Some nice effects with naked women shadows dancing in a glass of wine or something. Looks cool, but this cleverness in programming isn't there that I saw in the old demos, which
Exactly.
I like.
Exactly that point. Exactly that point. Yeah.
So we think the same. It's nice, and I agree with you. When we were 2 years ago on the Gamescom, I don't know if you've ever been there. It was for me a shock to be there. It's like 10 football fields of size, halls, big halls, full of people in big companies there, with huge stands, with a full-scale X-Wing Star Wars spaceship there, where you can, and people in uniforms and everything like in the movies. So they have basically whole dioramas of games there, and the real big companies which have money like hay, like, and you have 400,000 computer game fans dressed in Pokemon or Princessin Mononoke, or what her name is, running around there, buying expensive T-shirts and playing games which will come out next year. So it's a totally crazy world, and has it's the noise level of an airfield with all these peoples. But what me surprised, we had 3 vampires there with joysticks and monitors, and there was the kids, and they played Bubble. And you had young kids which could have played, I don't know, whatever new game. They stood in an Amiga, and together 2 kids playing Bubble and level after level, and they had so much fun playing these good old classic games, Lotus 2, 2-player racing car, very simple, but they enjoyed it so much, these nice old arcade games. And then I see these kids, and I think making games is nice. They don't need to be complicated. They don't need to be looking like a movie. You don't need gigabytes of graphics. Simple, nice games which give, and you see how these kids have so much fun playing them, like Bubble really. This also is what I think, or gives me a motivation to try to program games, because if you see how much fun these kids can have playing these innocent games, this really warms my heart.
Yeah, simple games still count.
We just started developing a game for the Vampire, a small game. It's not just BigGun, it's a part of an old arcade game. Bill proposed this from Discrete FX, and he has a few more games in mind he wants to get remade in beautiful graphics. Simple games, easy to understand, but nicer, like a deluxe version basically for the Vampire. I mean, if you like to also make games or be part of our team making games, talk to me and I help you if you need help on your game, or you help us to finish our game, whatever you want.
Okay, interesting.
Ok, altre domande? Any other questions? No other questions? So we can let the Gunnar go to bed.
Thank you, guys. I have to thank you
Thank
One
you.
here.
Thank you very much.
for
Yeah,
the invitation, and I have to thank you for staying with
Hope you
Amiga,
enjoyed the meeting.
right?
it was very interesting. Thank you very much.
Very, very, very much. See you.
See you.
Ciao, grazie.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao.